talk about pixels. What are pixels? Pixels, pixels, pixels. Pick souls? How do you pick souls? Remembering, it's a remembering of you know, all the cheesy stuff. Your greater self, higher self, the self in the clouds. Yes, it's cheesy. The language around it is cheesy. Only the language around it is cheesy. The actual thing is not cheesy necessarily. The cheesy part of it is there to make it challenging for you. The same way that we have this perception that wearing tinfoil hats is some sort of a weird or bad thing, right? At one point in your life, likely thinking about tinfoil hats stopped you from doing research, or it put you into a place of self-judgment, perhaps. Pixels. What most of people here seem to spend the majority of their time doing is it's like you wake up, eyes open up, and you're in a river. It's all muddy and full of shit, and there's a giant roaring sound, right? You're completely buck naked, and the river's really wide, and there are whirlpools and eddies and logs screaming by. And you hear a big roaring sound, and you don't know what it is, but it sounds scary, right? That's what coming to awareness in this realm is kind of like that. So the way that the river is structured is it doesn't allow lots of you know, alright guys, we're all in this river flying toward oblivion, and I want you to pull out your yoga mats and, you know, do some chanting, do some breathing exercises. Okay? Imagine a gentle meadow, birds chirping. Go to your quiet place. Give yourself a hug. Give your child self a hug. So that's not happening, actually. Actually, there's just chaos and noise and the threatening of greater chaos and greater noise and possibly some sort of bodily destruction coming right around the corner. and lack of time. And the river is actually, you know, anyway, it's something like that. So most people spend their time trying to keep their head above the water because they know that going beneath might mean that oxygen will no longer be available, and they know from past experiences that that's not a good thing necessarily. And also they spend a lot of time worrying about that giant roaring nose that seems quite close and seems to be coming closer very rapidly, right? So that's what most people seem to spend all of their time here doing. And then there are signs, you know, there are people floating by holding signs that say like repent and escape that roaring thing that's coming quickly, and then they're telling you how to do it. But they don't tell you necessarily that they might be representing the roaring thing itself. They might be tricking you, possibly. Let's say for sure, possibilities. So, and you can be stuck in that perception of the river for a long time. Now, when you're coming to awareness, you're not jumping out of the river. You're still in the fucking river. The roaring sound is still there. So that none of that changes. Anyway, back to Pixels. So the point is observing the thing that you find yourself in. Observe it. You have to observe it. And if you're spending all of your time trying to escape the roaring noise, then guess what you're not doing? You're not doing a lot of time like dipping your hand into the river, smelling it, seeing if there's any creatures floating around in that particular bit of water you pulled out. You know, you're not just like looking underneath and seeing who's floating by underneath you. You're not checking your skin to make sure it's not wrinkly from all the water saturation. You know, all these things you're not necessarily doing when you're just hurtling toward oblivion. And not only that, okay, like that's the least of your worries. That's the base thing, the base fact that you're hurtling toward oblivion is not, that's the least of your worries. Okay, so not only that, but there are creatures inside of your own body that is inside of the river. There are creatures inside of your own body that are trying to like eat you. And then you know, the thing goes on as far as this, the Ouroboros aspect of it. It goes and goes and goes, and then anybody that's trying to do spiritual work, the ones that actually know what it is and are not airy-fairy full of shit, you know, practitioners or whatever, they know what it is. Yeah, so anyway, the basic idea of Pixels, if you imagine that this experience, your experience, you're like, I'm in a body, I have a body, right? You have a body, okay? You got a body. You can move it, you can wiggle things around, right? Understanding what the body is, what this carnal 3D experience is, that's what we're here, we're supposed to be examining that process and understanding and feeling into what it is, getting it, like really not only just getting it on a mental level, but also being able to live the experience without being in fear constantly, or without getting distracted by a billion different glittery objects that are available around every corner. But we get distracted. I mean, I get distracted all the time. I've been distracted making this video like by many many things, right? So essentially, this experience that you were in, this body, this form, you know, things are moving around, right? This experience is a screen, okay? It's a screen. Your lived experience, your perceptual. Now, I don't mean that this here is a screen. Like, oh, there's cars on my TV and they're flying by and trees are going by and, you know, I can read words: bandit, warning, Appian Way, penal, city limit. I got a television going on. I'm inside my own television. This is exciting, right? Okay, that is happening, but that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Your own being TV is composed of your self TV is not composed of what you see on the screen in front of you. Your self TV is invisible to everybody around you. That's why they say go within, because what they're saying is that this here is, I don't know how you can even say it. This is just like a minor background process that's basically creating one pixel. Now, that might sound demeaning. Yeah, it probably sounds demeaning to you because you're like, well, fuck, like, you're telling me I spent 70 years to create one fucking pixel? Yeah, life is kind of mean sometimes. But, like, you don't have to be demeaning toward yourself. You don't have to sit here. I mean, when you find what your own life is, when you find what you are, okay, or at least you start to discover, and you start peeking around a couple corners, you know, maybe you get scared here and there. You're like, oh, fuck, like, I don't want to be that. I don't even want to be involved in that. I don't even want to know that exists, you know. So that can, you know, you can freak out by trying to explore your own self, because that's what they call shadow work, because we've got a lot of shit, you know, percolating. Anyway, back to the pixel thing. It's like you're writing like a hard drive. Like your soul is your greater self thing is an amalgamate of a bunch of experiences, right? So you've had experiences. Okay, you can even without going into lifetimes, you know, having multiple lifetimes, all this, just you look at your own life, you're one track human life. I've been on this planet or this realm for 33 years, and okay, so I have memories, I've done things, I've gotten in motorcycle accidents, I've gotten in confrontations with human beings, I've eaten lots of things, I've had sex, climbed trees, fallen out of trees, you know, had surgeries, all kinds of things have happened experientially for me, right? And if you look at your past in relation to your present moment, the examination process involves how does that somehow interweave into this? Like, how does that work? How does that even happen? I mean, I spent a good amount of time being absolutely traumatized by trying to examine how this experience here, this current present moment physical experience, somehow translates into mental memory. Like, if you've never thought about that before, at least in this lifetime, and you know, if you're aided by substances and you start having a thought like that, you're like, oh shit, like, whereas my memory is not directly here on the screen, where the fuck is it, right? But somehow it's there, and somehow it's informing this current moment, right? So then you're like, my fingers are somehow bleeding out into memory. Like Donnie Darko, right? You got these fucking beams, tractor beams coming out of your chest. Yeah, that's a determinism sort of reference, but which I don't necessarily condone. But you know, you can freak yourself out by asking how the fuck that happens. And I did, you know, like, you know, ego deaths up the wazoo, trying to examine these things. But at some point, you know, you come to a bit of placidity, not plasticity, placidness. You come to a bit of reprieve from the chaos of the river, and you can simply be, you know, you find something that is not so loud all the time, and you can look, you can examine. So this process of examining, and again, meditation, it's being present, because it allows you to explore. And I don't mean going and exploring the mountains, okay? You're exploring your own perceptual experience as a being living inside of a perceivable physical universe. You're in it. Now, you don't need fucking drugs for this. Like, not to mention that there's been so much nasty shit happening here that beings don't even know what the fuck is around the corner. Like, if they take a hit of weed, okay, weed for me may not be weed for you, or if they drop a tablet of acid, they have no fucking clue, like, what sort of train is about to run their ass over. And again, you know, we like playing this game. We like, you know, just popping out of the corner and screaming off onto another adventure without having any fucking clue what's going on, and then freaking out about it, you know. We seem to enjoy that, but as well, like, it can get out of hand. It has gotten out of hand, and, you know, like, like Aurora says, you know, the lunch lady comes back into the room, and the kids are all just, like, having a massive food fight, and Lord of the Flies is enacting itself upon the school scene, and all this is happening, right? So things can get out of hand, and then the sort of guardians have to come back in and, like, fix everybody up and put everyone in sort of back into a bit of order. I'm not saying, like, in a forcing way. I'm saying, like, we need it. We need this. We need the assistance. We forget, you know, when we've come back, when we've come down into this experience, we forget what the thing actually is, or what we actually are, and we get flippant about it, and we get egoed about it, and we get into the one track about it, and we're like, I gotta make my life about it, and all these things about it, and then we forget what the thing is, and then the thing comes into runs us over, right? And then we cry, and then the lunch lady comes and puts a band-aid on the boo-boo, you know, sends us off back into the playground, stuff like that, right? So, anyway, back to Pixels. If you look at how your memories are structured, even within this one-track life, the memories are there for the present moment, because the present moment is the real thing, right? The memory is not the real thing. The real thing is where your own self is located, like where your awareness is located. Presumably inside of your body, not off into the mind, into the future and the past. So it can be beneficial to look at the mechanism that chops off the experiential happening while it's going. Like, there's a chop point, and when we first come in, we don't know what it is. Like, it's sort of like on autopilot. The chop points are on autopilot, or else we get you know, programmed with the chop points. You know, and they're called what? They're called getting a college degree, they're called getting married, they're called birthdays, they're called holidays. You know, we're given these gross, sort of arbitrary chop points, And we're also told, like, these fucking things are important, you know. And so we start doing that, and we start ignoring ourselves in our moment, and we look to those arbitrary programmed in chop points and somehow ascribe importance to them when in reality they don't have any importance. They're not special in a big way, and they're not special in a they are insignificant way. They're not special in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. No specialness to those chop points. And in fact, there's no specialness to the chop points that you end up coming up with yourself. They're special in the fact that you are a unique being, and how you express yourself is, again, which I'm getting to shortly, the way you express yourself in your moment is an amalgamation of differing chop points that you're bringing in through you being you. Nobody knows exactly how we are ourselves. Like, we don't know that. We're a big, giant fascination to ourselves, and it's heart-achingly beautiful sometimes, and it's just utterly destroying sometimes when you see the depths of depravity that can be reached. But, you know, we're endlessly fascinated with ourselves, and that's what the universe is essentially anyway. It's it's the self looking at the self and all this yada yada yada. So the idea basically is you're coming out of the gross chop points, or the ones that are spread out, like I was saying earlier, the carrot. You gotta spread the carrot out really far via thinking about the degree way before you get it, and anticipating, and then once you get the degree, you know, using it as a badge of honor, and then you're eking out more carrot juice out of the thing. And the nasty part of the whole thing is that you neglect your own actual lived experience, present moment. You neglect all of that in a span of time of, 30 years that the carrot of the degree spans over. You're neglecting all of your present moment moments because that one thing is sitting there as this import, this item of import, and it's not an item of import. And it takes a while to understand that. It takes a long while to understand that. And then the ones that we call NPCs, we don't like them. We don't like that method of conversation because they're only bringing in like 3 carrots, and their carrots are spread thin, and they lack depth. That's why these conversations aren't interesting to us, because there's nothing in there, right? Anyway, back to the pixel. So you're learning how to make your own chop points, right? Like, you were given these chop points by the system, by your programming, by your parents, by your family and friends. And you find out, these are all arbitrary, okay? None of them mean anything whatsoever. None of these holidays have actually any meaning whatsoever. Someone's just like throwing pieces of their vehicle just all over the road. So none of these things have importance, right? And you find out these arbitrary chop points can be thrown out the window. They can be discarded. And then, you come to the Lovett thing, the improv thing, ad-libbing, making it up on the fly type of thing. But you gotta find something else with which to situate yourself within the realm, within the world. So again, I'm rambling, but the chop points, you start making your own, because think back to a memory, and again, this can be traumatizing for people if they haven't ever actually looked into it. Sometimes looking at yourself can be painful, and we can freak out, but it's better to do this without drugs, because drugs might fly you off into other timelines, and there's other stuff, but that's the whole point of the compassion thing, is because that's like your safe word, like remembering that you love yourself, right? Like, I love myself, okay? So if something starts flying off, or a trauma starts happening, or whatever, then you can just remember that. Like, everything's fine, it's always fine. I love myself, etc. God loves me, whatever. Mama loves me. You know, these types of things, the compassion thing, and the compassion, again, has nothing to do with concepts. It has nothing to do with mind creations, mentalizing, nothing to do with logic. Compassion is just compassion, like it's love for life, it's life for life, etc. Without judging, without memory. It doesn't like Stephen was saying, compassion, Jesus doesn't keep memory, or the life doesn't keep memory. The memory is for, you know, practical things. It's not sitting there as a judge for morality or something. So back to the chop points, as you're going through your present moment, based on your programming, you chop off certain seemingly important things, like, you know, okay, I'm here, yes? Cars are there, ocean's there, I have my little interior environment, right? So, in terms of, should I make a chop point, right? Like, seal off a memory somehow. They get sealed by trauma, actually. Like, that's part of the MK trauma programming, is these chop points get sealed, and then the packages, right, can be manipulated and triggered. That's what triggers are called. That's what they're for. They're for triggering back to a chop point, or what you could call a check. It's the same thing as a checkpoint. It's not really different. It's like, you got the graph of your life, da-da-da, you know, and then all of a sudden there's something that goes, eh, like that. Like, that's a chop point. It's like, you snip the tape, yeah, back to film recording. You've snipped, and now you have a little coil of film, and that coil represents an experiential aspect of your life that has been chopped and sealed, and via memory, if you get triggered, or if you just simply look and explore down into memory lane, you can look and you can find those little sealed off memory chunks. And you can look at it, right? Like, I can remember back to a motorcycle accident, yes? There are trigger points, there are chop points that remember me back to that. And I can think about it, like what I was doing, how it happened, driving along in the fog, car stuck in the middle of the street. I didn't notice him until too late because I was following the person in front of me, and my windshield was covered in, of course, water and condensation, and so I smashed in. I was gonna smash into the car in front of me, but I dumped the bike and hopped off, hit my shoulder, dislocated, rolled, and so on and so forth, right? So that's chop points, right? Anyway, back to the idea of pixels and the TV, the actual TV screen. It's a multi-dimensional TV screen, and it's invisible. It's invisible to these eyeballs, these 3D eyeballs that see form and physicality. That part of you, which is your soul essence, it's your greater self. And again, I'm not attributing special meaning to these things. Like the soul, yes, it does have special meaning, but I don't attribute special meaning to really anything, is what I'm saying. So, your present moment, which you were always in, you can't escape the present moment, is composed of your screen, yes, your 3D screen, which has like things moving in it, is composed of that simultaneously along with your own soul essence, which is composed of a shit ton of experiences with little chop points in it, right? It's like you have a sea of experience internally via your memory system, and they're all sealed off whether they were trauma points or things that you thought were exceptionally beautiful, so you created your own chop point, etc. And you're composed, your multi-dimensional screen that is yourself is composed of all of those, and you pick from those based on how you are. And that's like your you know, it's you. So your present moment is composed of somehow this 3D, you know, seemingly like a TV screen, like, oh, I'm inside of my own television set. It's kind of like that, like I said earlier. Yeah? And then your sort of infinite over self, your soul self, has the memory of all of these sealed off bits of accesses, right? Via the maybe trauma chop points, maybe beautiful chop points, maybe whatever, maybe arbitrary, I don't know. And what I'm saying is, you are the ultimate arbiter of these segments. You are. That's why the whole point of you meditating is you're figuring out how it is you're navigating this sea. And the way that this realm has been sort of flipped, there's a sort of upside downness of it, because what we see with our eyeballs is sort of like the lesser part. That's why it's weird, because like this here is just like blank slate, essentially. You know, it's blank slate. You can do anything with it. Like run around. I can stop on the side of the road and jump off the bridge into the ocean if I wanted to. But I have lots of other things within me that say, like, likely that's not a great idea, right? But it is essentially a blank slate, and you can do things, you can do different things. But your present moment, yourself, is, and how you speak, is you were speaking from those little sealed bits of information somehow, right? Like, we don't know exactly how that happens, but that's somehow what's happening. Memories are coming, your past memories, and this, depending on how deep you get into it, when you speak, you could be speaking from ancestral memory, you know? When you're still on NPC level and you're speaking, like your soul self isn't speaking, it's something like a parrot talking about the arbitrary, you know, societal chop points, which once you come to a greater awareness, those things lose all meaning. And if somebody's talking about those, like, oh, they're talking about Super Bowl, they're talking about whatever, and they're not putting their being self that is composed of like an infinite array of these chop points in their own unique way, then you're like, okay, that's what they know as an organic portal or something else, right? And for you, they have no meaning whatsoever, like or else they're annoying to you, like, stop, you know, why, kind of thing. But when you're in your moment, you're floating along and the things are happening around you, you are exploring, like you are like this little dot of light inside of your own body that's like running around and hopping on this and that, and then opening up a chop point like a memory, or maybe you can open up a piece of a memory and you insert it in like so, maybe you pull it back, maybe, you know, like you are like this dancing essence that's just floating and flying around everything, and you're also the still point, like that doesn't give a shit about any of it. And that's also the point of meditation, because we get too caught up in the phenomenal appearances, and we get thinking that, like, oh, you know, this is real fucking important, what I'm doing here in this like video game thing, and you forget, like, no, that's not actually so important. What's important is like this multi-dimensional soul aspect essence that is speaking through this particular body, right? That's more important than, that's why it's inside out, because what you see with your eyeballs, again, is finite, and it can be categorized and like, oh, you know, da da da, that's a nothing, that's a city of San Francisco, it's a nothing, it's like it's a pixel, right? It's not a nothing, but it's a blank slate that beings should and ought to be in there, moving around, dancing, playing, moving, like exploring, etc., and so on. And they don't do that because they're not capable of doing that. They're doing something else. They're doing like trains on train tracks or robot movements or whatever, right? So, okay, so I am making a point here. To get back to my earlier demeaning statement. Okay, so like, you're multi-dimensional, right? You know, you're in one aspect of yourself here in 3D. Things are happening, right? What I'm saying is the levels, they're cascading levels, and yes, at some point in your life, okay, if you believe in reincarnation or if you believe that their beings are multi-dimensional, at one point in your life, you're going to be out of this 3D form, and your entire life, okay, will become a chop point. It's going to be this. And the other being, you know, whatever you come into out, that being is going to be sitting there talking and gesticulating just like me, and that this thing that was called Gary Warmerdam, you know, lived to 85 or whatever, and then he died. That will be a memory in a larger being, and while he's sitting there talking to his YouTube audience, right? At some point, that memory could be accessed, and like, what I'm saying is infinite. You know, it comes out through like anything. You can have a memory and reference it through speech to where the audience barely even knows that you looked at it, but still the fact that you looked at that memory changes a very nuanced piece of the happening. And the investigation of how these things happen is what we're doing here. We're examining, we're looking, and you know, of course, the reason compassion comes in is because, like, I know the capacity for horrifying things happening, especially within like systems like these. I get it. I've been there. I've been stuck. I've been eternally stuck in like shit shows. I've been this. I've been that. Like, I've been to lots of things. I understand a lot of it. I remember it, and like, you know, we're exploring. But that's why you keep compassion as your highest aspect, and the remembering that people are not remembering. A lot of people don't remember what they are. They don't remember, like, this here is a multi-dimensional TV screen, and the beings who are so-called real, when they speak, they're accessing all this massive sea that everybody can't see, because, you know, the 3D thing doesn't show it necessarily, but when speaking happens, then other things come through. Anyway, so the whole point of that was to say that, like, you know, as above, so below, aside from the cult thing, we really need to stop thinking. We gotta drop the specialness of the terms, because people they're removing themselves from a possibility of exploration by saying, oh, it's a cult, stay away from everything possible, symbols and everything, and he made anything movement with his hand and blah blah blah. Okay, it stops you from exploring. So anyway, but your whole 70 lifespan will become a memory at some point. You can't deny that. Like, you're not going to be alive in this particular form, in this particular arrangement forever, and at some point, assuming that you die, change to another level, at some point, this whole experience of 70 years or 80 years or 100 years is going to be one memory. And then, like I was saying, that memory can be referenced or inserted or touched or danced around, or, you know, like I said, again, it's infinite. So, but that's what we're coming into, is remembering, you know, this play. This is divine play.